There we go. Is that better? Can you hear me now? As I said before, well, you couldn't hear me, but as I was saying before, we are focusing again on our Gobbo again in today's stream. Focusing mostly on highlighting and doing the base in today's stream, so that'll be exciting. Even going to be highlighting some of the metallics as well today, which I don't normally do, so it'd be quite nice to actually highlight some metallics and see how that looks. Starting off with Evil Sun Scarlet. Because again, this is a highlight shade. I don't want to be having it too thick. I want it to be quite watered down. So I've done probably 2 drops of paint to probably 3 or 4 drops of water. But I'm literally picking up the tiniest amount just on the tip of my brush. I'm going to begin on the Gobbos. Yeah, more Gobbo. Exactly, Summit. More Gobbo. I'm going to be applying this to the beginning of his hat. What we're doing today is not only just first round of highlighting, we'll do secondary round highlighting. On the app you can see this if you have the Citadel app, where it kind of gives you a base, you do your base colours, then kind of shows you how to shade, how to highlight, and then how to add extra highlights. So later on I'll even be going in with a tiny bit of orange over the red, just for the really, really high points, just to make them look a little bit less flat. But anyway, how are you, Summit, and how is everybody else? The bow, I'm just focusing it through the middle of the bow, so the outside edges are darker, kind of creating a little bit of dimension and depth there. Kind of. You might be able to see it. The lighting isn't the best. It's the only issue. But on his jacket, I've just gone across where his shoulder is and dragged this colour across kind of where the muscle underneath is. Just kind of add a little bit of dimension. I'm glad it's a good way to finish your relaxing evening. Between this and playing probably a few games, probably sounds like a pretty idyllic evening for you. Oh, don't want to be putting my paintbrush in that one. That is my cup of tea. I don't want to be drinking paint. But yeah, it's really nice to see how this little figure has come across in the last few streams. What I'm debating right now is whether or not I want to paint the inside of this little bag here to look like it's baubles, or whether or not to look like it's coal. I think I'll do baubles, so I can use a few more colours. You been up to much today then, Summit? Or has it been more or less a relaxed day? I can't wait to see it finished either, to be honest. I've had a lot of fun painting this guy. Like I said, it's our first Christmas one I've ever done, but he's been really, really fun. Let's turn this around a bit more so you can actually see what I'm painting. Debating whether or not we should potentially do like a little, not so much like an anniversary stream, but definitely a 1 year stream. Obviously we're streaming up more anyway, but we might do, because I've got a bunch of Sylvaneth now, and since Sylvaneth is how I first started on this channel, I might do a little Sylvaneth stream in a couple of weeks' time. That's a good question. Have you started painting yet? That red I just used for that first bauble was Methystone red. And now I'm going in with the green, which is Wildflesh. It's one of those things where I felt the same way when I first started painting. I was like, oh, this could be terrible, but equally if it is terrible, you can just paint over it, you can give it another go. And as I said, it is just paint. So it's definitely worth still having like a little look. Are you still thinking Skaven? Or have you found, in addition to that little kit, have you found anything else that you like the look of? Tea break? Yeah, so all of, if you were to go for Citadel paints, which is obviously what we're using, then all of these are water-based. So the only thing I will tell you to be kind of wary of is if you've painted a section and then you touch that section a lot, it will just start to come off as it's drying, because it's water-based and it reacts to the water and stuff like that in your skin. Normally you get it on edges quite a bit. Because I've kept the edge of this quite clean, I've managed to mostly be holding it by the base when I've been painting this. But had I been holding it by the smoke or by the top of this figure, you'd probably find there's a little bit of wear and tear just from where my fingers were. But again, that's easily avoidable, and if you do it, you just go over it again with some more paint. And again, like, we're not sponsored by Citadel paints, but we've got so many, and we honestly have had nothing but good things. We haven't had any bad things when it comes to any of our Citadel paints. If you are still looking for paints, then I'd recommend going that route. Not just because it's the Warhammer recommended paints, but they genuinely do work really well, and I find them to be very beginner friendly. And some of these paints we've actually had for a year, and we still haven't used them all. Just shows how little of it you have to use. Once I've painted these baubles, I'm also going to be using a shade again. So I'm going to use Reichland Flesh Shade to go over the sack, just to kind of make it look a little bit less flat. So I'll be doing that in a little bit once I've painted all the baubles again. I think you need to think of a name for your first figure that you paint. And like I did with the other baubles, I'm going in with Retributor armor as well. So the main three colours are those red, green and gold combo. Brian the Clan Rat. I think that's a strong name. A bit like Mr. Nerd's guy here. This is Dave. They all need good names. Speaking of which, I don't think I've actually named any of my Sylvaneth. Might be something I should look at doing. Just getting Discord up, so if Signed is chatting away, then I can actually see her messages. In a way, giving them human names almost makes them better. Because it just makes them look, you know, slightly less intimidating when they come in and just cause absolute carnage. But I almost like that more. Or Clive Rat, yeah. At this rate, he's going to go ahead and start painting an entire army of rats with human names. So you have Clive, you have Brian. It's very strong. Whilst that one dries, before I start making any more of a mess, I'm going to go on to the gun here. And I'm going to be using some gold paints to actually highlight that for the first time. So I'm going in with Auric Armor Gold here. There we go. I'm going to switch to my slightly smaller brush. This is definitely a type of process when it comes to laying any of the metallics, to kind of go over it in sections and kind of go over it again. Obviously, when this is all done as well, these pieces will be stuck onto the figure. So that kind of make it look even better. Because this piece goes onto this cog there. And will go across his shoulder like so. And then the sack is going to be held in his hand here. There we go. Because of a gold star in this sack as well, I'm going to be going over that with some of this as well. Focusing mostly on the centre portion, just kind of add some brightness. Have you looked at any other figures then, Summit, or are you mostly focusing on your Skaven at the moment? For the silver, I'm going in with Storm Host Silver. Pretty big figure to paint, maybe it would be easier, although more time consuming. It would be more time consuming, but equally you're going to be able to pick out details better, I find, on bigger figures. And from the start, when I first started painting, the slightly bigger ones were easier. So they are more beginner friendly, although they are more time consuming. So it's that thing of, you got, you know, best of two sides there. You've got either take a bit longer and make it look really, really cool, or go smaller. And in fact, smaller can also be more time consuming if you're trying to add that detail. So it really just depends on what you're trying to add. Focusing this Stormhost Silver on the shoulder, on that 25. You might be able to see that. It just has essentially made that 25 a little bit more vibrant. Just make it stand out a little bit more against that gold. Start with those Stormcast you got in the box set. Yeah, they are actually really, really cool. I've actually painted some Stormcast in the past. And again, it is lots of the golds, the metallics. And in a way, they are really, really beginner friendly because you can't really mess up painting something gold that's gold all over. But then you can start to have fun a little bit later on when you add like the blues and things like that. Show you some Stormcast actually. These are from the Crypt of Blood starter set. So this is one of the Warcry starter sets that we first looked at. First one we played actually, when we first got into Warcry. They're called the Zandia's Truth Seekers, I believe, but they are Stormcast Eternals. Couldn't tell you what their names are anymore, because I know each character has a name, but off the top of my head, I cannot remember. But you can make him look really, really cool. And then, Big Hammer Boy. Again, don't know what his name is. His name is now just Big Hammer Boy. But again, colour scheme wise, really, really basic. It's just, I believe I used Auric Armour Gold, basically all over for their armour. And then a shade called Cantor Blue for the capes, and some Eshin Grey for the, like the underskirts and things like that. Can't remember the word. Tunics, that's the word I was looking for. Tunics. And then I went in with Reichland Flesh Shade, so that same shade I used last time, this one. Just to kind of dirty the gold up a little bit so it didn't look too clean. But again, it's really, really basic. Four or five paints. And it was a figure painted. Thank you very much. I think for me, they were about 2 or 3 days of work. But again, I am quite a fast painter, so I've painted this guy so far in 6 hours? 5-6 hours? But it'll probably be just under 8 by the time he's finished. I'm going to go back in with that Methystone Red now. I'm going to use it to highlight some of his armour. Again, I'm wiping majority of it off, so it's not too overpowering, because it's quite a bold colour. Have you been looking into any kind of paint schemes that you're liking the look of, done any of that kind of research on it? Or are you looking at strictly just following a guide to begin with? I'm back in on the sack now. I'm just going back in with that Warg flesh from before, the same green. That one. To be honest, a lot of this is exactly what this figure is. It's following a colour scheme, and it looks really, really cool. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with going with the colour scheme. I think most of my figures have followed a colour scheme. There's just been the odd one here or there that hasn't. Just cleaning up a little bit of flooding there from a little bit of water that came off my brush. Have you been up to much today then, Summit? Have you just been enjoying some peaceful time off? I also just realised the very top of this bag actually has part of the guy's hand on it, so for that I'm going to need Retributor armour. In for the rest of the week though. Yeah. It's that thing of you kind of get, when you get your days off sometimes you don't really plan on doing much, sometimes you just don't want to do anything. We've been busy with doing some DIY, putting stuff together for the child that is coming very soon, aka our child. But other than that, we've had a pretty relaxed few days. Mostly been working on our videos and content for the channel. I've been painting some Nighthaunt figures, which I've got videos on coming out on next week. But of course, first things first, we'll be doing the video on Mr. Nerd's Helmsmith of Ashut Dominator Dave here. He is the first video that's coming out. I just take some really cool pictures of him. Yeah, rare for me to have energy to go out on days off. Yeah, it's... Sometimes you get, especially that first day off, sometimes the only thing you want to do is just curl up in your bed and go to sleep. And just catch up on some much needed rest. There we go. That's his little clip. I'm going to go again with some white in a moment, just to go over the looking glass, which for I believe you remember last time I used, what colour did I use last time? Frisian white, no, Frisian blue. In this case I'm actually going to use, instead of white, I'm going to use blue horror, which is a very, very pale, almost white blue. I'm also going to be using this for the base as well. So I've put a little bit more product on here than I normally would, just because I've got a larger area to cover. Kind of just creating that glinting, glowing effect on the looking glass. Just make it look like it's not completely flat and give it some dimension. And now I've watered it down a little bit more. I'm just going to go in over the base and almost kind of let the product sit or sink in where it wants to sink in on the snow. But focusing it mostly on those higher areas. where the snow's kind of piled up, so like here. Yes, I'm thinking definitely going to do some Sylvaneth very soon in the streams. But I also want to do some 40k stuff. Just haven't decided what yet. Do you think it's a good idea though for if I have any future videos where I'm doing like an army of something, a bit like with my, like I would if, say for example with the Stormcast, if I had these guys, if I'm only showing you how I painted one, I could paint a couple of them on stream or one of them on stream as well. Because I'm going to spend the time painting it anyway, I might as well do it on stream. But this is mostly what this week off is, I think. Is going to be a bunch of painting, some video stuff, and of course any prep that we want to do for our child that is on the way. So it's going to be a pretty busy week, but pretty productive. That's like the first highlight of that with a light blue, which is like super, super pale. So I'm going to go in later when it dries with some white scar as well, just to really bring out the really bright parts. It's coming along quite nicely though. Going back in with that Auric Armor Gold, I'm just going to start highlighting some of the cogs and things like that that he has on his body. Flooding from my brush again to make sure my brush is completely drained before I try and go in with a bit more paint. That's better. For these pieces, I'm not being too dainty with it. I'm just kind of picking out little sections and just adding a little bit of differentiation in the colour from just the Retributor armour, just so it doesn't look so flat. Although I do think I will be going in with the technical paints soon, just because it takes a little bit longer to dry than the other paints. And then afterwards I might even go in with another technical paint called Valhallan Blizzard, just to really add snow. That one kind of takes overnight to dry, so if I do that, that'll be the last thing I do today to finish off the figure. picking out sections. This is almost like such a subtle colour that it's more than anything just kind of bringing attention back to those sections. So I'm putting it currently on the hinges that he has on either side of his suit of armour here. And it just brings them out a little bit more, makes them look a little bit more dimensional. Whilst this one still completely dries with the baubles, I'm going to go in on this piece with the Reichland Flesh Shade, just to kind of start the process of shading that. So it's Reichland Flesh Shade, one of these ones again. It just helps make this look a little bit more dingy. Which you can see as it sinks in, it goes into all the crevices and just creates a little bit of depth as well, without adding too much darkness. I do think the shading is probably one of my favourite parts of the painting though. Even though it's such a simplistic step, one, because you don't have to be really tidy with it, you just got to make sure it looks pretty tidy when you're done at the end, to make sure you haven't got any pools of it sitting in places where you don't want it to sit. But it just makes, it can kind of bring a figure to life a little bit and make it look less flat and dimensional, one-dimensional that is. That one down for now. I'll do the handle on that one at the end when the rest of it is dry. It's kind of wild for us to think about how much myself and Mr. Nerd have learnt in the last year when it comes to this. But we've definitely come a long way with the hobby in a year. Just going on that other panel with that Methystone red I had before. Okay, pretty happy with this so far. Now I'm going to start highlighting some more of the green sections with a very, very vibrant green called Moot Green. It's one of my favourite greens actually. Used it on my Cherry Blossom Sylvaneth to fill in any of the gaps where the it looked kind of like it was the magic was pooling through them. Just me knocking my headphones off, sorry about that. Thinking of focus that on stuff like on his hand that is holding the smoke grenade, or the candy cane grenade. We're going to do some around his finger, we're going to do some down his nose, on his chin, and then use this Moot Green as well on his legs just to kind of highlight those. Yeah, a bit of a bonk. Yeah, this is one of my absolute favourite greens. Because how bright it is in contrast to the other greens though, I want to be really, really careful to make sure it's blended, so because otherwise it'll just kind of look, I've just added a stripe. Which is not really the look I'm going for. Now that knuckle. And the fingers. The more time I spend painting this guy, the more it makes me want to watch The Grinch as well. But I know the minute I start watching Christmas movies, it will officially be Christmas season for me. So I'm holding off a little bit longer. So I'll just paint a green Gobbo to look like him for the time being instead. In fact, for his legs, I'll probably go with a slightly darker green. Just because, even though I love that green, it's a little bit too bright for the legs, because they are supposed to be metallic. For that, I think I'll go in instead with Warpstone Glow. There we go. It's mixed. Now I can go in on the leg. Speaking of watching Christmas films, do you have any like Christmas traditions that you like to follow, Summit? I work in retail. I hate Christmas now. I know that feeling all too well. Are there any days that are off limits for you, in your particular line of retail for days off? Like, is Christmas? Can you actually get Christmas off on yours? I know I've worked some jobs in the past where Christmas Day is just treated like it's any other day, whereas other places, it's like you'll get like just Christmas Day or just Christmas Day and Boxing Day off of, or just New Year's or whatever it is, whatever you want to trade for it. All of December is off. Ooh. I think this is the first time in probably about 10 years. 24th or 25th due to store being shut. That's not too bad, at least. Because I work in retail where you kind of have like the sales, because it's clothing retail. We have to go in on the 24th of December, and I think we're out of there normally by like 5, 6-ish. Well, the 31st, that's not too bad at least. Guaranteed to get New Year's Eve off. I think I'm going to go in and start using some of the technical paint, and I'm going to go with Sterland Mud. Just because I want it to dry with enough time that I can then show you some of the Valhalla Blizzard as well. I know we've only been going for nearly an hour, but this can take a little while to dry because it's got grits in it. Yeah, so we've had that before. So we'd normally like close to like customers about 4:30, so like Sunday service trading hours, and then spent a couple hours just kind of getting the store ready for sale. And the amount of times I've been stood in the window, I've had a customer banging on the window, being like, "Let me in." It's like, no, not at all. The one time where I'm not allowed to let you in, and I'm going to save every second of it. Just quickly show you on the palette the texture. So Sterling Mud is this one here. You can see it's quite lumpy and gritty. That is the intention, because this actually has like grit in it to make it look like it's mud. And we're going to just apply this into the holes on the ground. With the technical paints, it really depends on how thick you layer them, depends on how long they take to dry. If I was to go in with a different type of texture base, like this, then this is something I'd have to leave at the very least overnight to dry, or at least a good few hours. But the payoff is worth it. Using stuff like technical paint is probably quite good for your bases, Summit for your Skaven. So that's those two gaps filled in. The technical paint I'll be applying later is this one, called Valhalla Blizzard. And similar to this, it kind of has a grit in it, but essentially it's got some kind of magical power in it, essentially that makes it turn, when it dries, it looks like snow. And I absolutely adore this. I love doing wintry scenes, so this is really, really fun. You don't have to paint them a base colour. For your figures, paint them with the base colour first, and then build it up in depth using shades, and then add highlights. For technical paints, you just need to use a technical paint. You don't need to add any colour to it. They already come pre-coloured. So this one, when it dries, will come out lumpy and look like snow. And Sterling Mud, when it dries, is already brown. But they have all kinds of effects, actually. But as you've seen with the actual figure itself, I've gone over it with base colours, then I went in with shades, then I've gone in with highlights. Building on each layer. Yeah, I think one of the negatives when you work retail, if you work Christmas Eve, is that in many ways, if you are a Christmas person, Christmas does not feel like it starts until you get home on that Christmas Eve, if you have Christmas Day and Boxing Day off. Right. Time to go in with some white Scar to add some white highlights back into his hat. I also need to add some white to the top of his candy cane and also some to the snow. I keep almost accidentally putting my paintbrush in my tea. Bad idea. Never actually used to like white scar that much. I used to prefer, we've got one called Corax White. I used to prefer that. But for highlighting, this has actually proven to be a much better option for me personally. Where I've gone over the white, I'm just going in with some water around the edges, just to kind of dilute it into the snow to make sure it's not bunching together. Since we got out-of-date food free at work, I got a big birthday cake I've been working through. So basically just pure sugar. I love that. That was me a couple months ago now, back in October. I somehow accumulated 4 birthday cakes. So for a good solid week, I was eating birthday cake. A bit more than a week. As long as I could. I had to get rid of some of it, unfortunately. Had to sacrifice some of it. But I was still very much enjoying the amount of sugar I was consuming. Four, yes. I had one massive birthday cake, 2 smaller ones that feed like 4 people each. Well, they're supposed to feed like 6, but let's be real, if you're going to eat one of these little tiny cakes, they normally feed about 4. And you have a good chunk each. You got a single slice of cake on my actual birthday, and then you had to go back to work, so I was left alone in the house with lots and lots of cake to eat. And I wasn't going to throw it all away, that would be a waste. So, like a champ, I ate as much as I physically could. The baby loved it. He was on a sugar high for a week. I think last year I ended up with 4 or 5 birthday cakes again. Like I said, just bringing around a present, people were bringing around cakes for me, or making cakes for me. Which was nice, but again, it's just a mountain of cake. I'm only one person. Since I always tried to put my birthday off as leave each year as well, like if I was going back to work the next day and I had that many, I would probably just take one of the cakes in with me and put it in the staff room and be like, have fun. But it's usually like a good week almost between then and me going back to work, and I'm not going to bring in cake that's going out of date. So, you know, have to make sacrifices, have to eat it. You can kind of see in this light, you can see how where you've got the mountains or the mounting piles of snow, it's just a little bit brighter around where the mud is. So it just kind of adds that highlight, that warmth that would be there, that brightness if the sun was casting down directly onto it. We do have some Lord of the Rings figures as well. Like I was talking about a lot about 40k and obviously Age of Sigmar figures. But obviously we do have some Middle-earth ones. And even though we're not be playing that for a while, if you do want to see me paint any of those, let me know. Because at the moment I've still got Ring Wraiths, Witch King of Angmar, and then most recently from the newest version, the newest Lord of the Rings movie, aka the War of the Rohirrim, I have Helm Hammerhand on his horse, as well as a few people from that. So if you want to see any of that be painted on stream, I'm happy to. But they are even smaller than this in some cases, so that one is a bit. Those ones are a bit more of a challenge. The more figures, the better. Yeah. I'm looking forward to doing the ring wraiths. Obviously, colour scheme wise, they're going to be quite simplistic, but there's a lot of them to do. So. Go figure. Oh, goodness. The dad jokes are not getting any better. Okay, I think I'm going to go in with another gold figure. Another gold paint called Liberator Gold. And add a few highlights of this as well. Because overall at the moment I'm pretty happy with how he looks. I'm going to go in with secondary highlights and use a little bit of orange on the red parts. And then some more warpstone. But other than that, I think those two are going to be like the main ones that I do. And by that point, the base should be dry, so I should be able to then add some snow and then finish off the sack, which is going to need a few highlights. Okie doke. Start with the orange after I've done the gold. We don't have all of the paints, but we do have a lot of paints. Like I think the last time we counted, it was like well over 60. But I think there's somewhere between 90 to 100 paints in total, so we've got a majority of them. But yes, we don't have all of them yet. Keyword there being yet. Because almost every single time we pick up a new figure, we look at the paints that it requires, and then we end up buying those. Just because then if we do want to follow the guide, we then have it in if we don't already have it in to begin with. But yeah, as a result, it just means our collection grows quite substantially. It's not so bad now because we have so many. Whenever we go in looking for paints now, it's more of a case of just pick up one or two. And maybe a refill of something we use a lot, like Nuln Oil, which is that shade we used last time. The shade paint. Or lead belcher, like the metallic, because we just go through this a ridiculous amount. Speaking of which, I've just had a look at the picture. And the tip of his gun, his twisted bayonet, is actually silver, so I'm going to paint that silver. In fact, in many ways, we're almost surprised now when we come across a paint that we don't have. It's a rarity. Just push down. The good thing about like the starter sets, like the ones you've looked at, is they do come with like, all the paints you're going to need. But then if you look at expanding your collection later and to paint obviously more figures, you'll probably find a lot of those paints will be useful for other projects as well. Bit of twisty barbed wire here as well, so I'm going to paint that silver as well. Which you can kind of see a little bit better up close. So the majority of the weapon is now gold, and then the very bottom parts are now silver. Kind of developed like a bit of a thing whenever it comes to painting the figures. After a while, I'll kind of go with the set theme. So with my Nighthaunt, originally I kind of went with the traditional Grim Reaper-y kind of look, and then I added some oranges and some blacks. Then I went to that like purples and things like that. And most recently I've been enjoying the blues and greens. So that is something you'll probably find as well if you're painting after a while. If you don't want to follow a scheme, you just kind of go, I wonder how that would look with this colour. And it'll either be catastrophic and be awful, or it'll be like addicting, and now you want to do everything in that colour scheme until you're tired of it and do something else. There we go. It's looking pretty good right now. Clean up a few edges on the candy cane now with that white. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Right, Now time to go in with orange. For this, I'm going to go in with my thinner brush, which is a 3, just because I want to deposit the tiniest amount of this colour, because as you can see, it's quite vibrant, but it will make a very nice highlight. Sorry about that, just had to stop and blow my nose for a second. But yeah, this orange I'm going to kind of reserve for only the highest points. So I'm kind of just looking at the figure, looking at the red parts, determining where this would kind of hit. And then once I've kind of got that sorted, I'm going to go in and add literally a few drops, just enough that this is somewhere between, because it's not, I don't want it to be too watered down that it's running off of the paper, but still pretty watered down so that it's not too thick when I apply it. And I've just applied that to the very front of his hat for now, almost like in a cross section. It's just the tiniest amount of colour. Once again, I'm just going to follow the line of his hat, the seam of his hat from about where his arm is, to about here, backwards. But yeah, pretty happy with how that orange has gone on. If you remember in the last stream when I was talking about when it comes to painting, not being afraid to like hold the figure in different ways. So at the moment, for example, like I'm holding the figure on its side just so I can actually get a better application of the colour to kind of get it along that seam without making it too messy. Hey Ballistic, how you doing? Figure's come quite a long way since you were last in the stream. So we also have worked on the camera quality a little bit better, so it is getting there. We're slowly making the quality a bit better. As you can see, he's coming together quite nicely now. Also started recording on my right hand side, which for me is very foreign. Used to filming everything on the left hand side. Just a reminder, like when this sack goes together, this is what it's going to look like. But since the technical paint is still a little bit wet, I'm going to move on to these now and start adding some dimension to the sacks. We're happy to have you here, Ballistic. Thank you for tuning in, I appreciate it. What I've got here is a layer paint called Screaming Skull. I'm going to deposit a tiny bit of this and I'm going to use that to highlight the highest points of the sacks so you can kind of see where these lines go up. That's where I'm going to be applying that. It's kind of like a yellowy beige colour. And using that thin brush that I was just using for my orange a second ago. I'm just going in with that same brush to do this. What have you been up to then, Ballistic? Have you been working on any of your... Because I think before we were talking about you were really interested in your 40k. Been working on any of that recently? No. Oh yeah, I remember him saying with your hand shaking, you can't. There we go. You can kind of see those creases now a little bit clearer. Now do the same on this one. I was asking Summit earlier about any Christmas traditions. Do you have any Christmas traditions, Ballistic? No worries. Welcome back. Now the rest of the sack is painted, I'm going to go back in over the hand and the handle on this one using that Reichland flesh shade that I used earlier, just to finish it off. If you have any comments about the videos we release, I'm more than happy to share them in the comments or wherever you want to. Really Ballistic. We're open to any feedback and anything like that. Because we're all in a bit of a learning experience, we're all still learning. So if you have any advice that would be helpful, then please feel free. In the comments, you can leave them here if you want. That's up to you. Okay. So that technical paint that we applied earlier is now dry. At this point, I could either go in with a light brown and add some texture to this, which I might do just to make it look less one-dimensional. And then after that, I will go in with technical paint Valhalla and Blizzard. With the ones the last couple of videos I've done Ballistic, I wasn't necessarily cutting them short. It's just a case of they were, in this case, smaller figures. So for scale. One of them is even smaller than this guy. So it's a lot of like doing the same thing for a while. But absolutely, if you want longer clips, I'm more than happy to extend clips and make them longer in future. That is more than okay with me. To add some highlight to that technical paint, I'm actually going to go in with the paint Nightquester Flesh, I think. This is almost like a fleshy toned brown, which is kind of a gross statement to say, but it's that kind of dark tan, light brown kind of colour. And using a fair bit of water, I'm just gonna almost dilute this down. As you can see, that kind of just adds a little bit of extra colour to each piece. For the last couple of videos I've done, so it will be the Tomb Banshee and the Angels of Death, the Space Marines. Those ones you're talking about, ballistic. With the Angels of Death, I did only record one of all of the 7. Just because, again, this was like hours and hours and hours of work. So it was more practical and time wise to only record 1 figure rather than 7. I didn't do any highlighting or anything like that on those figures. So those steps are naturally missing because I just didn't do those at all. And for the Tormentor Banshee, because she's so small, I added very subtle shades of dimension. I added like very subtle changes to kind of add the depth and the brightness. But overall colour payoff and the way it looked, I was very happy with how it finished off. So I didn't want to go in and add anything extra and risk ruining it, or in my opinion, ruining it to make it not look the way I wanted it to look, if that makes sense. And the footprint, I'm just going back in with a little bit more of that Nightquester Flesh. There we go. That's pretty much just going to be left to dry now, those footprints in that mud. And whilst that works, I'm going to go in over these little baubles with some of the highlight shades that we've used and just kind of make them look a little bit more shiny and a little bit less dull. So for the green one, I'm going in with that Warpstone Glow. I'm just adding like dots of the colour, because obviously these are not massive pieces, but if I've gone ahead and added highlights to everything else, I might as well add highlights to these. And for the red ones, I'm going to go in with Troll Slayer orange. And for the gold, I'm going to use Auric Armor Gold to do those highlights as well. If there are any techniques that you can kind of see, if you ever watch any of our content, that you want me to kind of show as well, especially for someone like you, Summit, who's like, obviously you're still getting, you haven't got into painting yet. So if there are any techniques that you can see that you want me to kind of show more of, then let me know. So because I'm not an expert, I'm far from an expert, but there are just certain techniques that I've used or we've used in our videos that we feel like have worked really, really well, and in many ways tied an entire piece together. Like something I'm tempted to do, just on the edges of this, is go in with a brush like this and do a tiny bit of dry brushing. Which, despite its name, is not completely dry brushing, obviously because you have to have product on it, but just kind of adds a little bit of extra texture. So I think I'm going to do that around the edges of the figure. So for this, I'm going to use Methystone Red. I'm literally going to just dip the tip of my brush into the paint so I can see it's all over every bristle like so. And then using a bit of kitchen roll, I'm going to brush off majority of that colour. So I'm left with just the tiniest amount of residue left on the bristles, which is why it's called dry brushing. And then I'm just going to take it around the edges of the figure, where I want it to be, that is. You don't want to be like too heavy-handed, because sometimes if you're too heavy-handed, especially if you've got quite a delicate figure, you could risk breaking it doing this. So just be really, really careful with where you're supporting the figure. So at this point I've got my fingers on the back of the figure so it's fully supported whilst I'm dry brushing. Because this is red on like a burnt browny red, you're not going to see it super strong until we take some photos. Because once this is complete, I will be taking photos and putting them up on the channel, on the community page, as well as all socials, so you can actually see the finished product in obviously a lot closer up than this. But yeah, it kind of brings out a little bit more of the red that I wanted, rather than just the brown. Now I'm just really going in with that kitchen roll and just brushing this brush dry. Because if I do plan to do any dry brushing with it again, you need to make sure it's as dry as possible. Before you go in with your next paint. But this isn't like an official dry brush, this is just a slightly fluffier brush. Normally dry brushes are a lot denser. But this works just as well, I find, sometimes if I'm doing a smaller figure. If I was doing something bigger, I'd probably want something a bit denser than this. But this works just fine. But also, whenever you use brushes like this for dry brushing, you are going to ruin these bristles over time. So, in many ways, I actually advise you get cheaper brushes. Because if you're going to be going through them, you might as well buy cheaper ones and waste less money and still get more or less the exact same effect. I think what I might do is go in with a little bit of dry brushing again over the smoke on his smoke bomb grenade and use a bit of orange just to kind of add the eyeliner brushes. Yeah, I've heard they're quite good. Like, eyeshadow brushes are good, paint brushes are good, like you can get the really cheap kids ones. You normally get like a pack, they're normally like really, really colourful for a couple of pounds. Obviously here in the UK, I don't know how much they are where you're from, Ballistic, but they're normally really inexpensive. For the smoke, I'm going to go in with that orange before. So that quite vibrant orange. They are cheap and they work. Yep, that's exactly it. You don't need to spend lots of money to get these really expensive looking results. Now it's mostly orange brush stuff. I'm just going to go over the smoke. Just to kind of give the impression that underneath the smoke there is in fact a lit wick. Yeah, pack of 6 for £8, really cheap and they do the job. They're expensive brushes for finding details, correct, yeah. Don't know if you can even see that, but it's now just brought a tiny bit of colour to an otherwise, that was just like a charcoal base on the smoke grenade. And I'm actually very happy with how that looks, so much so I'm going to do the same on the grenade that's in the gift pack. Yeah, the brushes are now linked in the description, along with the wet palette as well, which is also really inexpensive. But again, it just gives it a subtle bit of dimension and creates the impression that there is a lit ember inside these, well, a lit wick inside all this smoke. No negative because I'm using it over my hands. I've now got a little bit of paint on my fingers, but that's easy to come off. Like I said, this is all water-based paint. It's going to come off when I wash my hands. So it's not the end of the world. That'll probably be it for dry brushing today, because I don't want to go too much more for dry brushing, because I think this is already quite a busy figure. I feel like it's just needed on those edges and on that smoke, which you'll probably see in that light. You can kind of just slightly see that the charcoaly smoke is now just a little bit orange. Okie dokie. Now I'm going to go in and do technical paint, Valhalla Blizzard, which I'm going to fill in these little holes and do a little bit more over where the snow texture is already. And then I'm going to paint the outside edge. At that point we've been going for about 2 hours. So I think at that point he'll be more or less done. I might add just a few more highlights to his arm / his weapon. But other than that, he'll be pretty much finished. For texture, just so you can see it a little bit, you can see this is quite a thick texture. It's still really watered down, but you can see it's kind of lumpy. That is how it's supposed to look. So don't be thinking you've picked it up and got a bad batch. That is how it's supposed to look. As when you spread this out, it's going to create the impression of snow and then dry that way. So I'm going to take probably about that much and just start... Oh, drop some on the table apparently. Spreading it out across the base in little sections. Just to create little piles of it. And of course, because his feet have been in the snow, as you can see there's some snow residue on his foot here, I'm going to use that on there as well. I like little projects like this because even though this is obviously a generic figure and I've followed last year's guide, there's going to be other people's figures that are going to look slightly different than this. I've gone off last year's paint guide and the picture provided in the manual to paint this, but there's still going to be loads of other people's designs and loads of other people's versions of this that are going to look completely different to mine, and it would be really, really cool to see what they look like. But even this, it just goes to show, because this is quite a detailed figure on its own. There's lots of elements. Just how long it can take. But it's deeply enjoyable. I'm also going to put a little bit onto his looking glass, I think. Just along the edge. And I might even do some in little sections on places like the rim of his Tinboy suit. Just in like little sections where even with mobility, even with movement, stuff like this might gather, especially if it's been stood around for a little bit. And just kind of adds a little bit more, adds a bit of charm, I guess, to the figure. Even though he's already pretty charming. Obviously this is the red Gobbo, but this is just Tinboy. I feel like Tinboy needs a name. Got any ideas as to what we should call him? Terence the Tinboy. I like Terence. To be honest, I was expecting someone to just say Tim the Tinboy. So I like Terence. He sounds a little bit more sophisticated. You know, you've got the Red Gobbo, the Fierce, the Red Gobbo, and then Terence. Who's just trying his best. It's a close-up shot now, you can see that snow effect, the highlights, especially on stuff like his head, you can kind of see the highlights a little bit better. Where I've gone over almost like the drippy parts. You can see that orange in the smoke. Yeah, I think he's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with him. Since this weapon's going to be slung over his shoulder, because like I said, this gets attached there. You can kind of see it. It gets attached on the back of the figure. My finger's out of the way. I'm going to apply a little bit of snow to this as well. Just a tiny bit. Because why not? Just in little sections though. Because if anything with snow, I get quite excited about. Just love making these little snowy scenes. There we go. Add that down to dry. And then just along the edge of the sack, I'm going to apply some as well. Since he is dragging this through the snow. If you wanted to make this like a little bit more, the base a little bit more 3D, you could go in with something like this, apply it to the base, build it up, let it dry, and then you could paint over the top. And then you could use texture paints or textile paints for these technical ones, just to kind of build up the actual texture or the look of snow. Obviously that's another option that's completely optional. Because sometimes the bases are cool, but sometimes you just want to make them a little bit more unique and unique to you. So asking earlier on Ballistic, obviously we've got a few little 40k, I've got some Space Marines lying around that I might try and paint in some unique or fun colour schemes. But I also have a bunch of Middle-earth figures. Is there anything like that you would like to see? Would you like me to see me do a Space Marine in a unique pattern? What I might do is a little poll on the page and see which one gets the most votes for the next stream. Or would you like to see some Middle-earth stuff being painted like the Ring Wraiths or Helm Hammerhand? You just like watching people paint. That's understandable. Just put a little bit of snow inside the sack that's open as well. Because the other thing I've been doing, this is more off-screen stuff because at the moment we've been working on our Warcry. We normally go into our local store and play Warcry, but we're looking to do it more at home. So I've been painting some of the scenery from the various sets. So here's just a little piece I painted yesterday. It's nowhere near finished. I only started it last night or the night before. So I've still got a lot of detail I want to add to these. If you want to see scenery stuff being painted, we have a bunch of that as well. So if that's what you'd like to see, I'm happy to do that as well. Okay, what I'm going to do now is just paint the edge of this base. And I think that will be it for Terence the Tinboy and a red Gobbo. So I'm going to just paint that now. Just to pick a paint, I think I'm going to go for quite a vibrant blue. Because we've got a lot of reds, lots of greens, lots of golds. Just get snow themed. I think I'm going to go with Araman Blue, which is a beautiful colour. I'll paint the edge with that. Perk of this figure is there is so many different locations I can quickly hold on to whilst I paint this rim of this base. Without getting my fingers in the way. So you don't have to paint your bases, but I just like giving my bases a little bit of an edge to them. You could just paint the whole thing in a technical paint if you wanted to. But it's just a little extra step that I like doing. These streams are definitely doing quite well for the channel as well. We seem to be gaining a few more subscribers a week than we normally would, which is obviously very, very nice to see. Nice to see the channel progressing and growing and having more people join the little community we have. Especially as newbies to the hobby. It's nice to kind of have other people interested in what we're interested in and watching us do it. There we are. Nice blue edge to him. When it comes to taking off photos of the final product, this will be stuck together and his arm will be attached, so you will see the full figure. So by the time he's finished, he will look like this with everything attached. So he'll have the gun kind of going behind his shoulder, and he'll have the sack in his hand. So that's what the final product's going to look like. What I might just do is on the sack here, I might just add a little bit more highlight onto the star. And I'll do that, I'll use white to do that. What I might do as well is once this is dry, I might go back in with the same yellow shade I had before, the Casadora yellow. Because now that I've added this brightness to the center, it will kind of cling to that even more and make it look like it's glowing. Like this little star has literally been stolen off the top of someone's Christmas tree and gone home in this Gobbo's bag. Which I actually think, I quite like that idea, so I think that's what I'm going to do. Let's leave that to dry for a minute. Have you got any other plans for this evening then, Ballistic? Or is this your wind down time now? Have you got any other plans for the evening? Is this you kind of done for the night now? Is this just you relaxing before you go to bed, or have you got anything else planned for after this? Looking at stuff to set up a painting stream. Ooh, very interesting. Is it Warhammer stuff you'll be painting or something else? Something a bit bigger? Or just looking at doing a mix of everything? Going back in with that Cassandra yellow now. Just over the star. I have a bunch of old metal minis. Ooh, very fun. I'm also going to go over with that Cassandora yellow over the smoke as well. There we are. Anything special amongst those metal minis that you were looking forward to painting? We do have some old original Warhammer paints, so if you want to get some original metal mini... Oh, that's a very good idea, actually, Mr. Nerd. We have quite a vast collection of old minis. Most of them are... I think some of them are 40k, but a lot of them are Middle-earth. From like old magazines and stuff, in some cases. And they're tiny, tiny, so they are going to be a challenge to paint. But they would be fun. Three rogue traders I need to paint for a friend. Oh, that would be very nice. And one, ooh, Terminator Captain. Yeah, if you're planning on streaming that, I can almost guarantee Mr. Nerd will be very much in there watching that. Do another coat of this blue. Throwing him around. We do, yeah. We have a full list of our equipment down below. If you haven't already got stuff. And there we are. I'm gonna say that that is the Tinboy all done, I think. So let's bring it a little bit closer for you. Just turn him around so you can see his back. But yeah, he's pretty cool. And now there's his weapon with added snow. And then one half of the sack. And then the other half of the sack. Which that's almost like the hardest part to see because it's just so tiny. There we go. But yeah, when we take the photos, that will be put together, it will all be constructed. And then we'll take photos of him and put him onto the community page so everyone can see what he looks like. But yeah, we'll call it there for tonight. I think photos will do it even better justice. Like when I take the photos, I'll be able to get even closer than this. So each YouTube channel has like a little community page where you can make community posts for everybody to see. So it'll be just under the posts page, technically, but it's considered also the community page on YouTube. So if you want to see the photos, it will be in there. If you follow the link that Mr. Nerd has just graciously sent as well, you'll find it there as well once we post the photos, as well as any updates or anything else that we have going on. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this evening then. Thank you very much, guys, for joining this third and final stream on the Red Gobbo. The Red Gobbo Tinboy, sorry to be specific. Or Terence the Tinboy, as we decided his name was, since we got no other name suggestions. So therefore, here now, he shall be known as Terence. Thank you again, everybody who has joined in over the last 3 streams to kind of watch him come together. And we'll be doing some more streams in the very, very near future. A couple more this week, hopefully. Bare minimum, a couple more this week. I just need to decide whether or not I want to do a fun Space Marine or whether or not I want to do some Warhammer. Not Warhammer, this will be Warhammer. Middle-earth. But yeah, again, thank you very, very much for tuning in to today's stream. And hopefully we'll be able to catch you guys in the next one. I wish you the best of luck with getting your gear set up for your streams, Ballistic. And I do hope for the best, and hopefully we'll see you in a future stream. Summit, thank you very, very much if you're still here watching, for joining in as well. But again, we'll send you some photos of the figure so you can see it up close and personal. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. I hope you have a lovely evening for the rest of the evening, whatever you're doing. And yeah, thank you so, so much. Have a lovely evening, and bye for now, guys.